engage. Thank you for the recording. So I encourage you to fully engage and minimize your distractions, minimize any multitasking, and you can be on mute while the main content is being delivered, and then obviously come off mute so that we can engage in conversation. So let's start practicing our chat feature. If you could put in the chat what brought you to this topic, and that would be helpful for me. So if you open the chat bar at the bottom, what brought you to this topic? So I would love to hear from a few of you at least. What attracted you? What are you hoping to get out of today? Let's see what we get. This is getting everybody's thinking started. Make sure you're all here. All right. Looking to lead the staff across. Okay, great. Thanks, Brian. Who else? Improving the staff events to improve the culture. Great. Thanks, Susan. Who else? Love leadership, want to learn more, help staff enjoy work. Awesome. Great. So let's start off by thinking about loyalty. Okay, so yes, my signature style is stimulating thinking to inspire action. So that is what we're here for today. If you don't want to be stimulated and you don't want to be into action, then maybe you shouldn't be here. So I'm just totally joking. But think about somebody that you would do anything for. So this could be a colleague, a boss, in a professional example. Somebody that you would do anything for, that if they called you out of the blue and said, hey, I really need help with this, that you would drop everything and help them. And what is it about them or your relationship that would make you drop everything? So let's look in the chat. What is it about them or the relationship that would make you drop everything to help them out? Yeah, reciprocity, that's a good one. They've helped you out. Maybe they've put their neck out for you in the past. That's a good one. What else? And if anyone would like to speak up rather than using the chat, feel free to do that too. Common goals of serving others. Yeah, mutual respect. That's a good one. Excellent. Yeah, there's a trust. Yeah, they're always there for you. Someone that's reliable, someone that you can depend on, that you would just go above and beyond. Now, wouldn't that be fantastic if you had that same level of relationship with every one of your employees, where they would do anything for you and you would do anything for them? And that's really what we call engagement. And that's really why we're here today, is to talk about how to obtain that kind of loyalty, and that where someone would really go above and beyond in order to help each other. So you would do that for each other. So what we're going to be talking about is your role in engagement, and to talk about the importance of questions and dialogue in creating connection and relationship. So having meaningful conversations versus the interactions being transactional in nature. So it's typical in the environment, in a work environment, that obviously we all want to get stuff done. We have to-do lists, we have goals, we have deadlines, and there's a tendency to get very tactic focused and very transactional focused. Did you get this done? When is this due? And what happens is those meaningful conversations tend to disappear. So I'm going to equip you today with the technique around asking really good questions in order for you to create that dialogue and create that connection, so that ultimately you're creating that sense of trust and loyalty between you and your employees. So we'll talk about the difference between empowering and disempowering questions, and we'll learn how to craft powerful questions for various different purposes. So let's talk about the engagement crisis. And these are fresh, hot off the press statistics as of 2021, that the 36%, only 36% of US employees are fully engaged in their work in their workplace. So you're looking at 65 plus 64% of employees are not engaged. Let that kind of sink in for a moment. Like 64% are not engaged. And what we know about folks that are not engaged is that they are at risk of leaving your organization. And so retention, especially in this environment, is really critical. And so organizations need to take a look at how are they doing at engaging employees. And that's why I imagine that you've come here today. So 70% of the variance in employee engagement, it can be attributed to the manager relationship. So what that means is that you, as a leader of employees, that you can have that much influence over whether someone's engaged or not engaged. So it doesn't mean, so what that means is it's about the relationship that you have with your people that really impacts the large percentage of whether or not they are engaged. Separate and apart from organizational policies and leadership programming, all of that. So that's why we're talking today about what your impact can you have, what can you do to engage employees and bring that 36% number up higher. All right. So here's a list that of what employees want. And you can think about this for yourself as well as for the people that you lead. So employees want, and this is done, we've come up with this list through research. Employees want to feel valued and challenged. They want to be trusted. I mean, ultimately, they want to know that what they do matters. They want to have meaningful work. And they want to know that that someone cares about them in the work environment. They want to be included, and they want to have the freedom to do and explore and grow. And so of all of these items, so of these 6, which one, chat in which one is true for you? Which one is the most important one for you personally? I'd love to see in the chat. For you, for anyone personally, which one of these is your number one? Bullet number 2, to be trusted. Okay. What else? Thanks, Nikki. To feel valued and challenged, trusted, given freedom. Okay, interesting. My own little survey going on here. Trust and freedom to grow. Oh, okay. It's like an interesting little survey. To be valued. Nice. Okay, good. Good. So wouldn't it be interesting to find out which one of these is most important to each of your own employees? Because that way you know that you can be giving value, you can be treating them in the way that's most important, rather than assuming that the one that what's most important to you is the one that's most important to them. That might not be the case. Some food for thought there. All right, so let's talk about coaching. So coaching as a whole coaching is, the basis of coaching is that it's a purposeful one-on-one dialogue. And I specifically use the word dialogue because dialogue implies the back and forth exchange between two people. It's a dialogue that is focused on encouragement, inspiration, guidance, development, and action. Any or all of those things. So you'll notice that coaching is about taking action. And when you think about developing employees and giving them inspiration and encouragement, but it is about action. And I will make sure to point out that it's not for a performance improvement plan. So when I talk about coaching, sometimes I hear people collapse the idea of, well, I'm going to coach them into performance, coach them for performance. And really what you mean is providing them with performance feedback to help them get them back on track. So to separate that to the coaching approach is a pure coaching is in guiding people forward, in taking action, and in developing and growing. So that we're all on the same page. That's what I mean by coaching. And manager as a coach approach is critical because of these engagement survey drivers. So if you know the Gallup organization, they are the main gurus in employee engagement, and they have identified some key drivers for engagement. And here's 3 of them, and you can see that these are related to the manager themselves. So is there someone at work who encourages my development? Have I had opportunities at work to grow and develop? And does my manager or someone at work seem to care about me as a person? So you can imagine, and maybe you can even relate to this yourself. Think about a time at a job where you just felt like a number. Like people just didn't even know who you were. They didn't seem to care about you, but they cared about, did you get it done? And that's the idea that we're going with here is for you as a leader to look for caring about the person and of course the result, but we're looking at how do you create that dialogue where people know that you care. And taking time to have a dialogue conversation can be to really make the biggest difference. I can tell you a specific example of a particular employee that I was managing that had been a long-term employee, had been really high performer, and then had a real drop in performance. And at that time, she had switched to a manager, and that particular manager and that employee that employee would, in retrospect, found out that employee felt disrespected, that particular manager was very focused on their own goals, their own results, and just a change in manager brought that person's performance back online. And I can tell you, taking on that employee that was not performing, I was the manager taking that employee on. It was very challenging to set aside all of the stuff that I had heard about that person from the other manager around their performance. And I had to take a very curious point of view and get very curious about what was going on for that person and what was going on for her around her work, and setting aside my biases and assumptions around why she wasn't performing based on everything I'd heard. And slowing it down and just asking her lots of really good questions helped me get to the bottom of what was going on, even what maybe that employee didn't even know what was going on. And from there, her performance completely improved, and her loyalty is even higher than it was before. And her willingness to go above and beyond is even more than it was. And I feel the difference from when I pause with one of my staff, when I have a meeting with someone and I ask them, how are they doing? What's going on with them? that if I show that connection with them, that they have a different relationship. I can feel the difference in the relationship. And questions have been the key to that. So let me dispel some coaching myths. So some people would say, well, coaching takes too much time and it doesn't get the job done. Some of you probably may think that yourself. And so I would say that is not the true. Coaching, if you think about it, in the long run, you will get more done by investing in the relationship and investing in understanding the mindset of your employees, and that ultimately that they will become more empowered to get work done, and you will be involved actually less. And even in the kinds of everyday conversations, is the approach and how you ask the question that in that moment makes a difference. It doesn't mean you're doing anything more, it's just asking it in a different way, which I'll be going into in a moment. All right, so let's look at manager as coach. So here are some differences, and I've highlighted some of my favorite ones. As a leadership coach and a manager coach, I work individually with some leaders and managers around how to be more effective leaders, how for them to feel like they're really connecting and developing their team. And two of the biggest challenges I find are the ones I've highlighted here. So especially as a new manager, there's an assumption that you as the manager got promoted into this role, and therefore you need to have the answers. You need to know the answer. You need to have the answer for when an employee comes to you. So it's very tempting and very natural that as a manager that you would want to give the answer. Someone comes to you and says, where do I find this such and such a spreadsheet? Or how do I handle this situation? It's natural that you would want to be able to give the answers. And a manager as coach is, instead of giving an answer, is facilitating answer discovery. So I would encourage you to think of yourselves as facilitators of answers rather than the repository of answers or the answer guru. And that will, that mindset shift is actually a really important and big shift to make. The other one that I've highlighted on here is that you're focused on what you need to get done. And as a leader, it can be very challenging to rely on others to get the stuff done in the timeline or the way that you want it. And you, especially as a new leader, that you go into, if you were the expert in something that you're now no longer separating this idea that you're the get it done person. So someone who's like a high achiever or a get it done person that now becomes a leader, your urgency and other people's urgency might not be the same. So that's one of the challenges that I've heard from managers. And the manager as coach is to focus on other people's development in achieving the end result, but the end result is less of the main priority. It's the focusing on others to empower them, to get them to achieve what it is that they need to achieve. And this is at all levels. I can tell you, I've just finished working with an SVP with a global company, and high achieving female leader. And so you think, wow, she's got this figured out. If she's gotten to an SVP, she's got to be able to leverage people. And she's got hundreds of people underneath her. And she still is challenged by overwork. This woman works like no less than 80 hours a week. She is she sleeps 6 hours a day. And that's one of the downsides of a manager who takes on too much and doesn't leverage their people, is that you're at risk of overwork, and that I see quite often. Wondering in the chat, any of these that you might challenge with? Like anything that you find as a leader or as a manager, what are you challenged by? Anyone willing to chat in?
Hi, Christine. For me, really, even though we want to don't focus too much or only in the action and results, but at the end of the day, we all have deliverables. We all have to, and I have, that a little bit sometimes. Even though you try the relationship, even though you try to do this collaborative, I feel actually that our relationship through the pandemic really improve in across the board, not only myself towards them, but them between them, so the relationship between co-workers and the team itself and support. We always had teams available, but now it's like we use it. Before we didn't use it. And the whole thing is responsive, but there is a couple of individuals that I don't get to link the relationship, the collaboration and all that with the actions and results. It's like, as soon as you kind of turn your head to the other side, they fall again. And they go up a little bit and then they fall again. And it's like a constant needed of attention to be coached all the time in order to keep that performance and at a good level, because nobody's perfect, but a good level that produce the results that we need. So what magic you recommend to those that may respond to the relationship? They respond, the actions and the results go up, get better, but they don't stay like that.
Yes. Yeah, so I'm thinking when we get into the questions that you can ask for different situations, that you might have some strategies there for you. So let me know if that doesn't get answered for you in a couple slides from now. But my short answer would be that there are some people. Again, I'm also an expert in DISC and personality styles and communication styles and approaches, and we're not really getting into today, but modifying your approach based on the style and personality of that person. So with some people, you might need to use a style of questions that enables them to create accountability or planning. Whereas other people that you manage are very good at planning and organizing and keeping their selves organized. Whereas with others, you might actually need to use questions that help them build that ability to stay organized or stay accountable. And so they're using the different personality styles to keep that in mind. And when we get into the different kinds of questions, there's a set you can think of. What set of questions might I need to ask that person in order to address that need that you just expressed versus a different need for someone else, and the different set of questions for that person. So we'll be able to get to that.
Here's another one, Christine. I'll just go ahead and help you. It might be a little easier. Katie says, I oversee a ton of staff and find myself struggling for the time to have one-on-ones with all my staff. I do value my team and try, but sometimes I fall short in sharing my time with everyone. I have about 20 direct reports and then 28 other staff under one manager that I'm currently developing and mentoring as she is a brand new manager. So I guess what's your advice on that?
Wow, yeah. That's a lot of direct reports. And the when you are engaging in those times where you are connecting with those people, so instead of, I get it that you don't have to invest in the people in terms of proactive conversations. Oh, we've got someone with background noise.
Okay.
And I want everybody.
Sounds good. No worries, no worries. No, you're good, you're good.
Thank you. Yeah, so where was I going with that? Oh, yes. So when you do have individual conversations with them, is to select the questions that you're using the questions in that moment to create meaningful dialogue. So when you are engaged in a project or in doing something with that person, that you're actually asking meaningful questions that get into that strengthen the relationship just in the way that you're engaging with them on a natural everyday basis, not as an investment. So hopefully we'll get into that. Was there any other questions that I missed, Marilyn? Oh, thanks, Brian, for chatting in there too. Yes.
I'm sometimes more skeptic based and look for the potential pitfalls instead of just the pros of new ideas and procedures.
Yes. Yeah, good for you to know that about yourself, definitely. And I would, for that one, I would say one of the being aware of your mindset of what you're going into those conversations. I would encourage you to adopt, anyone, all leaders, to adopt a curious mindset, just like that example I gave around that employee that turning around her performance. I leaned heavily on my curiosity, and that is a main come from place as a coach, is to be neutral in any approach to a situation. That will allow you to access some pure questions, and I have some funny examples of questions that look like questions, but they aren't really questions. So being aware of going neutral in your mindset will help you with asking really good questions. So let's talk about the idea of powerful questions. So the goal of powerful questions is to create conversations that matter. And these are not necessarily extra conversations. These are in your everyday interactions. And good questions lead to innovations. So if you're looking at your organization for how do we get new ideas? How do we get innovation? How do we get creativity? Good questions and time for reflection allow for that emergence of ideas. I ask myself questions all the time to neutralize especially for myself, when I'm in oh my gosh, why didn't that happen? Why didn't I do this differently? Or if I'm reevaluating a situation and I feel myself going negative, I will turn that around and go, let me get curious about, well, what was most meaningful about that? Or what's there to learn about that? Or what's insightful here? What's this trying to tell me? So those kinds of questions allow you to open up and dig underneath to mine some insights. And let's look here about how to create a powerful question. So powerful questions, and what I mean by powerful questions are ones that make you pause and think. So they're thought-provoking. They create exploration. They strike a chord, if you can think of it that way. They stimulate a deeper conversation. They generate energy. So a powerful question might light you up. So when we look at some questions in a moment, I just want you to feel the question and see how it lands with you. And it might even evoke, a powerful question could even evoke another question. It can also shift you away from problems and trying to analyze the problem to being focused on what's possible. So what could happen? What else is possible here? So now you're starting to get a feel for what are those powerful questions. So let's go and understand the difference. So how to identify a powerful question. So looking at this chart here. And, oh, and by the way, I will send you this PowerPoint after this session. And I'll also send you an article that was written around the whole concept of powerful questions as well. So you will get that from me after today. So least powerful to most powerful. So a closed-ended question that generates a yes or no. So did you finish the report? There's nothing powerful about that. So instead, how's the report going? Even better, better than did you finish the report is when do you expect the report to be complete? Tell me how the report is going. Even better, how's the report coming? What do you expect in terms of what do you expect the report to generate? So seeing the difference between the closed-ended and most powerful. Now, there are obviously times where closed-ended questions are completely appropriate. Did you shut the front door? Yes or no? I just need to know. Did you shut the front door? There's nothing wrong with closed-ended questions. It's when do you deploy the different questions in the conversations. And we do tend to lean on the did you or did you not type of questions that end up with a yes or no. And I'm encouraging you to move up to more powerful questions, because those ones that are further up do cause people to actually do their own thinking. And this is one of the most common complaint that I hear from managers is, well, my employees always come to me for everything. And they don't do the thinking. They won't solve the problem. They come to me with the problems. They don't come to me with solutions. And where I go with a manager is, well, what have you done to create that reliance on you? So in what way, as a leader, have you taught people that you're the go-to resource that has all the answers? So if you always have an answer for them, then people don't have to do their own thinking. And in the end, what you're doing is disempowering the people, because they're not doing their own growth, they're not developing, they're not growing, they're not coming up with their own answers, and you're now overworked, and can't get your own work done because everyone's coming to you. Now, your intentions, especially, I've seen this with, especially in the nonprofit world, is that we are helping people by nature, and we care about being supportive. And so we often think that giving people the answers is going to be, that's being helpful. And instead, I want you to consider the idea that you're a facilitator of them coming up with their own answers. And so leaning up, further up the pyramid here will allow them to do more of the heavy lifting and the thinking and the problem solving than you doing it. Questions or thoughts about that? Okay, I'll keep going. Why is not a powerful question? Now, there's times where why can be helpful. In the work environment, I often see why as a, why did you do that? Why would you go in that direction? So why often it's easy for why questions to have rhetoric behind it, or sarcasm, or judgment. So that's why I encourage leaders to move away from why questions, because they are very difficult. Why questions are very difficult to come across as pure curiosity. So why questions beginning with why limits, and it can also have the negative impact of people feeling like you're judging them. So limiting questions as a whole are, when I say limiting or even disempowering, they drive toward a conclusion, they're close-ended, they have a leading statement in them, whereas enabling or empowering questions are more thought-provoking and open-ended. So I'm going to give you some examples in a moment. Let me ask you, what would be some of the examples of a disempowering question that you might ask someone? I've shared a few just verbally myself, but in the chat or just speak out, what would be a disempowering question or statement?
Why didn't you clock out last night?
Yeah, why didn't you clock out last night? Nice, thank you. Who else? You know, one person's participating. What else?
Why didn't you get the statistics done when I asked you to?
Good, thank you. Thanks, Brian.
Why your report is not updated.
Yeah, why is your report not updated? Good.
You don't know what you're doing? Do you know? Do you know what you're doing?
You know what you're doing? Oh, there you go. Yeah, do you know what you're doing? Very closed-ended. Ah, good, thank you. Nice. Yes. So here are the qualities of a disempowering question. Rhetorical. So not really a question, but sounds like a question. Do you know what you're doing? You're not really looking for an answer. Yeah, not really. It could, so disempowering questions, they may have a sarcasm behind them. They tend to be judgmental. They're really a statement versus a question, or they're an opinion. So why didn't you finish that yesterday? I mean, that's an opinion as a question. Oh, that's, or you can look at that as sarcasm. So I guess I would encourage you to scan your own vocabulary and start to be aware of whether you use any of these approaches, obviously unintentionally. And I'm sure all of us, I'm sure I do. I'm sure I do with my 16-year-old daughter. I can almost guarantee it. So, absolutely. So here are some sample powerful questions. So what do you think? Where should we begin? What's possible, or what would be possible if? So what's the real challenge here for you? So this is a good one. Let me give you an example. What's the real challenge here for you? You have an employee who comes to you with a big story. Long story about, well, and then this happened, and I tried to call Sally, and Sally said this, and then I went to this person, and they seem to be going on and on and on about a story. Great place, that's a great place to say, what's the real challenge here for you? Or what is it that would be most valuable? What support could I offer you that would be most valuable? So similar questions like that, rather than just as a way to boil down when someone comes to you with a big long story, is to ask that one question that gets them to think about what's the main thing that they want from that story. Rather than you having to sift through it and interpret it and say, well, if I'm hearing correctly this or that, or you're going to give an answer, because that's a tendency, that's another way when the person comes to you with a big long story, that's another way that they're coming to you asking for you to tell them what to do. And instead of telling them what to do, you ask a question. And that gets them to come up with what they see as, helps them think through what the situation is. So other powerful questions, what's next? What outcome do you anticipate? So if someone's, that previous example, someone, they obviously know how to achieve or accomplish the results, they keep it going for a while, then it falls off. Great place to ask. So I noticed that in October, you were meeting the deadline every week. And then since then, what's happened? What's getting in the way? What do you think needs to change in order for you to maintain that performance that you had in October? So see those kinds of questions, you're asking them to come up with the answers rather than you feeling like you have to come up with the answer. Okay, so let's transform these into powerful questions. Number one, did you finish revising the policy manual? So knowing that what, how questions are the top of the pyramid, what question might you ask here in, as a how or what? Who would like to jump in?
You can ask what changes did you make when you were revising the policy manual? How did we change those things? You know, where did we get our information from?
Okay, great. Thanks, Brian. How's that coming along? How's the policy manual coming along? Great. Let's look at another one. Are they going to get that funding or not? Someone jump in on that one. What or how?
What's the status on the funding?
Simple. Great. Thank you. Why did you do it like that? I see smirks. So what would be a how or why question on that one?
I would use like a tell me about your process on whatever it was.
Okay. Thanks. Who else?
What is it why is it? No, I don't know. Same thing. You tell me your process of doing it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What is the process? Kind of.
Hmm. Yeah, what were you going for?
Maybe something like, oh, that's an interesting way of doing that. How did you come up with that idea to try it that way?
Nice, nice. Yes. And what I love about that one too is, I mean, but like the tell me is good, they're all good. What I like about the how did you come up with that approach is that you're getting to understand, as the listener, you're getting to understand that person's thought process, and that will be great information for you as a leader to understand more. You're understanding more about how they're wired and what their approach is, and it can help you identify gaps even more by asking those questions. You are getting more good information about that person and how they approach the work. Okay, here's a good one. All right, talk to Desiree first to get an answer on the budget amendment, then let the director know you will contact the funder. After that, finish the report. So how do you turn that into an actual powerful question?
What steps do you need to do to finish the report, or how? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. What approach were you considering taking? What do you think needs to happen next? Nice. Okay. Next one here. You should finish collecting all the data before contacting the client with the final answer.
How are we making sure that we are not going to the client with incomplete data? And what can we do to make that better?
Nice. Just feel that for a moment, those questions. Just let those questions land with you. It's like, how does that feel if you were on the receiving end? You know, like to me, that's like, oh, I feel like I'm in coaching. There's this phrase being called forth. And so powerful questions call people forth. It calls you towards something, and it feels like, oh yeah, what my opinion matters. As Brian said that, I'm like, oh yeah, my opinion matters, and yeah, I'm the expert here. Yes, he's relying on me to have this all figured out. So it makes me, I'm imagining that it makes me want to be on my toes for that person, for that. As now I know Brian's going to ask me some really good questions going forward. I better have my thinking done because he's going to ask me questions. I better have thought this through. Number 6, that's not how it should have been done. So think of this like, oh, someone made a mistake, didn't go well. So what question might you ask here?
What could you have done differently?
Good. Nice. Yep.
How
Yeah.
can we improve what we did for the next time?
Nice. Yeah, how can we improve what we did? What would you do differently? What did you learn? How would you approach this next time? Number 7, why would you bother bringing it up to Jose anyway? So how do you turn that into a powerful question?
Maybe, what were you know, what are your expectations on doing such? Mhm.
Okay.
Or doing whatever shouldn't have been asked.
Yeah. Okay, good. All right, good. So that those are the end of the practice moments. So I'm giving you some questions. Now you can think of all the multitude of questions that you could possibly ask, and they can actually be put into categories. And so I'm giving you some examples of categories. So clarification style questions when you're trying to get clear about what someone's thinking or where someone's going. There's a series of questions around that. So what do you mean? Tell me more about that. What part isn't clear? Maybe they're not clear. What part isn't clear? Assessment. So here's some assessment style questions. What are your other options? What are possible solutions? What do you think that means? So this is questions around evaluating or assessing something going on. So when you think of implementation, what's the action plan? What will you have to do to get it done? What support do you need to finish it? What's your first step? By when will you take that first step? So getting very clear around getting those answers, because that's the other thing about asking good questions is that it creates commitment to moving forward. So you can go from these original questions here of can you say more about that? What isn't clear? So what are your other options? And then you end up with, and what's the next step? So you can see how there's a series of questions that take you from creating the idea to actually implementing it. And I'll get into that in a moment. So let me finish on here. So ultimately the impact of asking limiting versus powerful or empowering questions, and I've mentioned this as we've been talking today, is that disempowering questions create an over-dependence on team. They're dependent on the manager, and they're not as independent thinkers. And ultimately, the manager becomes overloaded and overworked, and it can create where people feel disconnected and they don't feel that value, and ultimately low accountability, low ownership, and less initiative or less of their own creative solutions. Whereas powerful questions do empower and grow the team and stimulate that broader, deeper thinking, create innovative solutions, and ultimately create ownership. And I would think that this right-hand column is ultimately what all leaders and organizations are looking for from their people. I mean, ultimately it goes back to what I'd started out earlier today, which was around discretionary effort and loyalty. And when someone feels like confidence is what, I guess the word that comes to mind here for me, is that you're building confidence in people. They feel like they're having an impact and making a difference, and that they will be more willing and likely to go above and beyond and put in that extra discretionary effort. All right, so let's get into the last few minutes here around, I'd love to hear from you around what you have, oops, back up, moving all my windows out of the way so I can see my slide. All right, so what have you learned? What have you learned about great question asking?
For me, more than anything is diminish the dependency. So the open-ended questions, the boosting their thinking instead of me just answering. Sometimes it feels easier and faster, but in the long run is a much bigger investment, and then you are overworked, definitely.
Nice. Awesome, thank you. Who else?
I think some of the questions that, as managers, we might think is just straight to the point, and, literally just asking what's done and why not, can be misconstrued as, sarcastic or disempowering.
Yes. An overuse. You can overuse them. There's definitely a place for them, but yes. Yes. I'm reminded of a boss I had once that she, all her emails were closed-ended questions, or like where is the report? And it was in the subject line, where is the report? And that was it. And when you get those emails from someone on a consistent basis, it's what impact are you having on that person? And is that the impact you want to be having ultimately? Who else? What else have you learned today?
How you word your questions is very important.
Yeah. Thank you. And where do you see, if for anyone, where do you see this could be helpful? You could be chatted into, see, I don't know if there's been anyone chatting in. Oh, you're welcome, Nikki. I just see she chatted in. Do you have any questions about the process? Oh, I see, that was from a previous question. Okay. Yeah, chat in or speak up. Where might you use this? What's one thing you're going to do differently?
I know for me personally, I have an employee that I need to speak with later today. So I really appreciate this training. It'll help me frame my conversations, trying to find out some of the root of some of the issues going on and some of the training that's needed. So I think this was timely for me. It couldn't have been better. So I think that'll be real helpful in dealing with this particular person that is not excelling to where I would like them to be. So.
Nice.
I'm going to try to work on some of these questions, so I'm not so blunt and to the point and shutting them down.
Nice, nice. Yes, I would encourage you before you go into a meeting with someone is to pre-plan some what or how questions and just create even a cheat sheet for yourself of some favorite what how questions. It's like reprogramming your mind, reprogramming your brain to think in this way. And once you start getting that going, it's like getting the momentum starting, and you will start using a lot more what and how.
I was on the same lines as Brian a little bit, thinking about it for like our weekly check-ins with different departments and things, and just kind of pre-planning a few questions like that. You know, instead of saying like some of my questions are like, you know, what did you accomplish last week? It could be more, you know, tell me about the things that you did last week, and, you know, just kind of tweaking those a little bit more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's like, even like, what were you most proud of last week? Can get more into that person and what matters to them, and focus on them versus on the accomplishment. Nothing wrong with the what did you accomplish? It's just another approach. Well, thank you, everyone. My contact information is here. If you're interested in this kind of a workshop within your organization, just do reach out, and I do other topics as well. So hopefully you've gotten some value, and I've been honored to be here with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you all for being here. Have a wonderful rest of the day.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.